So my name's Lachlan Feggans. I am the Environmental Manager at Fuji Xerox Australia. We're literally across the road from Macquarie University, so very close. And I'm here to give you a business perspective, which is a business perspective, not the business perspective of Fuji Xerox, in terms of how climate change, how we impact climate change and how we're going to deal with it at a local and a global level. So I'll give you a quick introduction of the business, then I'll talk about the risk profile and climate change, and this is essentially how the business factors in risk of unexpected events within the organisation. Then I'll get to the nub of it, what we do, what our impacts are as an organisation, where they occur, and of course what we're going to do about it. And I'll wrap it up with a bit of a summary for you all. So the introduction, Fuji Xerox has been in Australia for 50 years. We have been doing sustainability for a long time before it was called sustainability. Back in 1969, we developed the first print device capable of double-sided printing. We are global leaders in product stewardship. And if you don't know what that is, stay tuned, I'll tell you. We also invented remanufacturing, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later as well. Essentially, as an organisation, we have been doing sustainability for a long, long time. And all organisations have financial goals, and we need to make a profit to be a sustainable organisation. And for Fuji Xerox, our profit is to be $1 billion company. And to be $1 billion company, we need to grow that year on year. To make that financial capital a reality, we need to draw down what's called natural capital. Okay, so all the resources that are available to us in the earth, be they trees, fossil fuels, arable soil, whatever you might call it, we actually suck them in to our economy, at value add, and we push out products and services. And in doing so, we actually negatively impact externalities, which was raised by Jenny Scott. We negatively impact the areas that we extract those resources, and we also pollute, be they greenhouse gas emissions or solid waste. Well, what natural capital really is it's a global bank account of resources. And businesses essentially make withdrawals from natural capital on a constant basis without the actual consideration of having to make deposits. So that natural capital is continually being depleted. And in the context of tonight's discussion, we're talking about an ecological service, which is natural capital, and that is climate stability. And essentially, climate stability is something that we all enjoy. And as you saw from Andy Pittman's quick synopsis, it's not looking like a good picture unless we do something pretty quickly. The key thing about natural capital and the impacts is it's external to the formal economy. Nobody pays for it, okay? So it's up to organisations like Fuji Xerox to actually take a leadership position and actually factor into the decision making of the business. Now this is actually a Fuji Xerox risk profile at a local level, and I'm just going to focus on the top one here, which is an unexpected event or disaster. Now we've had some pretty severe local weather events here in Sydney recently. We have a location at Rose Hill, our eco-manufacturing centre, which was evacuated because of local flooding. Was there an impact on climate change there? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. And we've already mentioned tonight the increasing incidence of heat waves. Now, in India right now, there's been 800 people confirmed dead by a heat wave. This is actually essentially where natural capital is feeding back into business and affecting financial capital. I know that heat waves in Australia are estimated to cost the Australian businesses $7 billion a year in lost productivity. So for us to reach that $1 billion financial target, we're going to actually have to factor this in because we're going to have productivity issues that we're going to have to deal with on an ongoing basis. We also have to look at our agility and efficiency of our supply chain. Now, the Japanese tsunami is just an example. It's not related to climate change, but it could very well be a climate change event that impacts our supply chain. We couldn't meet our customer demands. We didn't have products in the country because of this tsunami actually stopped our supply chain dead in its tracks. We need to factor those risks into our decision-making process, and it could very well be a climate-related disaster that impacts us next. And of course, sustainability. This is a key material issue for our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our employees, our parent company, our local community. If we're not taking a leadership on sustainability, we're not doing a good enough job in their eyes. So, what we do printers, we do paper, we do digital documents. All these products and services have environmental impacts, and we use a tool, a scientific tool called a Lifecycle Assessment, which actually helps determine where in the product life cycle the impact is at its most intensive. Now, for the printing device, it's actually at the in-use phase. So that's when, say, printing devices or a fleet of printing devices are actually being used by customers over a 3 to 5 year time. The energy use and the carbon emissions associated with that is the most carbon intensive stage of that particular product's life cycle. So what do we need to do about it? We need to make it as efficient as possible. Paper. The most carbon intensive part of the paper life cycle is actually when people throw paper into the landfill. So it's 37% of the footprint of a paper product is actually embedded in how humans interact with that particular material, throwing it into landfill. Staggering. And from a digital perspective, the digital document, we maintain data centres. These are very, very energy intensive facilities, and we need to make sure that we're running those as efficiently as possible. Of course, to make these products and services, as I said, we need to draw down natural capital, be they minerals, be they forest resources, and we produce pollution, greenhouse gas emissions and waste. At the top here, you can see we have dependencies. At the bottom here, we have the impacts of the organisation. Now, we're talking about a local perspective here, but we are a global organisation, okay? So it doesn't make sense for us just to focus at the local level. But to deliver our products and services at the local level, we need buildings. We need people in the buildings. We need people to sell our products. We need back office staff to support sales. And of course, the administrative process. We need service techs to stop our machines from jamming in your offices. They need homes. You can start to see that this is actually getting a little bit more complex for a global organisation. What you see here, the buildings and the people, this actually accounts for around about 7,000 to 8,000 tonnes of carbon emissions per year. Remember that number. We're going to get a little bit more complex now. To get our machines to you, we need to drive them round. So there's a lot of logistics associated with what we do here in Australia. Before that, we need to bring them into the country. So there's shipping. If our forecasting is off, we have to fly them in. It's very costly and very carbon intensive to do that as an organisation. But the stage before that, we need to build the machines in the first place, manufacturing. And of course, we need resources to do that, and we produce pollution. As you can see, things are starting to go upstream and get more and more complex for a global organisation like Foodie Xerox. So let's look at this in its entirety. For us to deliver products and services to customers, we need people, we need buildings, we need logistics, we need manufacturing, we need natural resources. We pollute and we affect natural capital. So you can see here the full Foodie Xerox supply chain, and this is very, very simplified, mind you. This is actually about 80,000 tonnes of carbon emissions per year. So for Foodie Xerox to have a meaningful impact on the discussion tonight, climate security at a local level, we need to actually look at our entire value chain, because that's where our carbon is embedded. Our local network here with the buildings and people, that's about 10-12% of our total footprint. If we ignored the rest of our supply chain, we wouldn't really be doing a very good job. So we use Lifecycle Assessment. We measure this across our entire supply chain. I can tell you not many organisations know what their total footprint is. What this told us was that our top 10 suppliers by expenditure were accounted for 55% of the annual expenditure, but 80% of the carbon emissions for the organisation. So for us to make the first step and direct our limited resources into actually reducing climate change, or reducing our impact on climate change and carbon emissions in our supply chain, we have to start with those top 10 suppliers. And this is a template that can be used for any organisation, any multinational organisation which imports products into Australia. So what do we do? As I mentioned before, we do product stewardship. We do it better than anyone else in Australia and arguably in the world. I can tell you that for a fact, because when a product that we make, we put a lot of energy, a lot of emissions are produced into making that. We deliver that to a customer, and then at the end of its life, we take it back. And we achieve 99.8 resource recovery. So all the energy embodied in those materials are continuously cycled through the materials economy. None of it goes to landfill. And we have third-party verification to prove that. Our paper products, for example. Now, everyone knows paper comes from trees. Increasingly, our paper is coming from paper. So we have 100% post-consumer recycled products that have sustainability certifications attached to them, and it actually turned out to be the most carbon-intensive part of our supply chain. So we made them carbon neutral. Of course, that doesn't wipe the slate clean. We are working towards actually making that product more carbon efficient. From a data centres perspective, very energy hungry. we just put them on 100% renewable energy. And of course, we're going to be working to lower the footprint of that data centre while that business increases. So to wrap it up, for Fuji Xerox Australia to have a meaningful response to climate security at a local level, we need to provide responsible products and services to our stakeholders here locally. We need to measure, analyse and understand and manage the emissions across our entire value chain, because it wouldn't make sense for us just to focus here in Australia when all our emissions are really embedded in our supply chain. Then we actually need to make people accountable and responsible within the organisation, and that is easier said than done, let me tell you. And a very important thing here, we need to have an iterative conversation with our stakeholders. We need to know what they think, what's important to them, and we need to respond in a meaningful way. And that is how Fuji Xerox, as a global organisation, will have a meaningful impact on climate security at the local level.